Number 22 is where we left off. I tell you, I'm gonna back up just a couple of verses. What I want to do is the best refresher. I'm having a tongue twisting day. I do not understand why this happens to me like this. Blah 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 blah. I'm practicing la 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 la. I want us to review beginning back at verse 19 of chapter 31. And I want you to follow along with me from 19 to 21. And it'll review everything we've talked about. And verse 19, when Laban had gone to shear the flock, then Rachel stole the household idols to her father Isaac. Her father's idols. Then verse 20, then Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was fleeing, and so he fled with all that he had, and arose and crossed the Euphrates River and set his face toward the country of Gilead. And so what we have been studying is that Jacob says enough is enough with Laban. He's worked for his two daughters for 14 years. He's worked 6 more years. All this time, Laban has not been right to him, has not done him right. He is deceiving. He has caused problems for him. And so he's, all this period of time, he's gathered up and raised a flock of his own. He's now a wealthy man, Jacob is, because God has blessed him. And he also has blessed Laban because of Jacob's faith in God and him being with him. And so we saw that Rachel stole from her father because he took everything. He wouldn't give them anything, and they're worried about their inheritance. And they're saying, well, what about our inheritance? And Jacob doesn't care, we're leaving. And so he left without Laban knowing. Laban's out feeding the sheep or shearing the sheep. And so they took off. And they've been gone 3 days. And we wonder, the last time when you were here, we were wondering, why did Rachel take those idols belonged to Laban? Why was those so important? And maybe it was because they didn't get an inheritance, and she's going to make sure she takes something with her. I don't really know other than that. She takes these false idols of her Laban's household. They were part of the family treasure. I don't know how valuable they were. I don't know what they were made out of. So I don't know, but it meant a lot to Laban. Apparently didn't mean that much to the girls. And so maybe they were taking them because it constituted a legal basis for their inheritance claims. I don't know. Or the possible beauty of them, or the possible value of them, or the sentimental attachment. There's all kinds of possible reasons she did this. We don't know why. And all we know is she took them without Laban's knowledge or permission. In fact, Jacob doesn't even know she got them. Jacob doesn't even know. It's a secret that she's keeping to herself. And so that's where we are at verse 22. Laban pursues them. He found out they had left after 3 days, and he chases them for 7 and catches them. Verse 22 and 23. When it was told Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob had fled, then he took his kinsman with him and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey and overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. Jacob been gone 3 days, and when Laban found out, but it'd be easy to catch up with him. Why would it be easy to catch up with him, you think? He'd been gone 3 days. What would be the reason it'd be easy for Laban to catch up with him? They had all that livestock, and they had all those kids and the camels and all of that. And so it was easy to catch up with him. So he catches up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But then God intervened in his behalf. God come to Jacob's rescue. Verse 24. God came to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream of the night and said to him, be careful what you do. Let me read it again. Be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad. So God is telling him, you better watch yourself. Watch what you do when you catch up to him. Don't do anything good or bad to him. And this is God telling Laban. I don't know how you'd feel. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, wouldn't you? And I do, and apparently he did, because we're going to see he's going to do exactly what God told him to do. God got his attention. He would have gotten our attention. God told him, you be careful. You don't speak to him, speak to Jacob either good or bad. Don't use any bad words of threatening him, of harming him, or try to force him to go back. And so we pick it up in verse 25. Let's read 25 through 29. Laban caught up with Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives and of the sword? Why did you feel secret? Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and did not tell me so that I might have sent you away with joy and with songs and with the timbrel and the lyre, and did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Now you have done foolishly, he says in verse 29. Is it in my power to do you harm? Or it is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to speak either good or bad of Jacob. Okay, so if you look at this, Laban's being very careful. He's walking on eggshells. We would do the same. He's being careful because God told him he better not say anything good or bad. I don't know where you go in this area, but you don't say anything good and you don't say anything bad. But he gets on the borderline here. Laban's being very careful, but he's expressing his disbelief. I can't believe you left. I can't believe, Jacob, you would leave. He's trying to show love and concern for his family. Verse 26, carried away my daughters like captives. No, he knows better than that. I didn't have the opportunity to celebrate with you in verse 27. I didn't have the opportunity on your departure to kiss my daughters and my sons. Verse 28, all the grandkids. Laban says, I have the power to do you harm. I got the power. I got the power. I can really do some harm to you. Verse 29. But God told me to be careful in verse 29 how I speak to you. In other words, God was restraining him. And so Laban says, I get a kick out of this because he says, look, I got the power to just annihilate you. I have the power to destroy you and take my daughters and my grandchildren back with me. And he may have had this power. He may have been a powerful man. But you know what? He ain't going to lift a finger against God, against what God told him. And so, anybody have any thoughts on this before we go on? I wish I could blame my reading this morning on my glasses. Yes, sir.
What kind of troubled me with this whole thing is that clearly he took God at his word. He believed God. Why did he have all these idols?
Why did he have what?
Why did he have all these idols?
I don't know. But if you'll notice, yeah. I don't know if he does believe in God, because if you notice in verse 42, he said, well, no, that's not it. Where was I? If I could find it right quick. Yeah, there we go. Verse 29. But the God of your father spoke to me last night. See, See, he's not saying, my God spoke to me. He's not. So, that guy's got problems, doesn't he?
That's what I'm getting at. Clearly he did what God
Yeah,
told him. I'm sure
Yeah.
without fear,
yeah.
but he had to have some belief, otherwise he would have just thrown it off and did what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So there was, you know,
It's
The selfishness of Laban too. He's been selfish ever since. You see, he was selfish when Jacob worked for him. In verse 30, right there at the end, kind of going like against him, stolen my gods.
Yeah.
It's a selfishness almost. I think it's what
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, and even Pharaoh, he didn't believe in God, but he believed that God could do everything he could do, and he believed God is going to destroy him and his nation if he didn't let them leave. I mean, you know, there's other ones like that. Thank you for those comments. That's exactly right, both of you. Yes, ma'am.
Laban had a control power. He had to be in control.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he lost control.
Yeah.
And
It's not made him happy, has it? That's a good point, too. I like it when y'all teach a class. You do a lot better than me. I want to hear you talk. Verse 30 and 31. Now you have indeed gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my goods? Huh? Oh, that's not the right place.
not goods, gods.
Where's
Gods. You said goods.
steal my gods?
Yeah, but you said goods.
I said goods. Thank you for correcting me. Don't do it again. No, I'm kidding her. I want her to correct me. I want everybody to correct me. I think it's my glasses. I don't know what it is. Steal my gods. See, he thinks that Jacob did that. In verse 31, then Jacob replied to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Now, I'm going to stop there for just a second. So Laban says, I know why you left, but why did you steal my gods? I got that right, didn't I? Verse 30, why did you take my stuff? And Jacob, you know, he's innocent. He didn't have any clue what he's talking about. He said, Jacob tells Laban, you left without telling. Jacob tells Laban, I know I left without telling you because I was afraid you would take your daughters by force and keep me from leaving them. I could see that because for 14 years he had to pay for them, for Rachel and Leah. He had to do that. And then he worked another 6 years. For 20 years, he has been deceived and taken advantage of by Laban, who constantly. And so he's afraid that, man, if you know I'm going to leave, you're going to get my daughters, you're going to get your daughters and my grandkids and all of this, my children, Jacob's children. Jacob has no idea that the false gods have been stolen. Verse 32, the one with whom you find your gods shall not live. He wants them to go ahead and search. Look around all you want to. Take everything, it's yours. Shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. He's making all these statements. He's saying, man, it's going to be death to the one who took your stuff. And if you find anything that's your stuff, you take it back. Laban is worried about stuff and things. That's what he's really worried about. He doesn't really care if they're leaving or not. He wants his stuff. So in verse 33, Laban searched all the tents, Jacob and Rachel and Leah's two handmaids, all their tents. And then verse 34, Rachel put the idols in the camel's saddle. Now what's interesting about this is, where do you think Rachel is sitting? On the saddle, on the camel, on top of it. So she's sitting on top of the idols, and Laban, he didn't find anything. He's looked everywhere. He couldn't find anything. And so now he approaches Rachel on the camel. She's still sitting on the camel. She's not even going to try to get up for him. He's ready to begin searching the camel and all around her, and she is not moving an inch because she knows I'm sitting on top of what I've taken from you. Verse 35. She said to her father, "Let not my Lord be angry that I cannot rise before you." For the manner of women is upon me. So he searched, but did not find the household idols because she's sitting on them. She uses as an excuse her female condition. And that's covered later in the Old Law in Leviticus 15, verse 19, and then other verses, 19 to whatever, Leviticus 15, 19 to whatever. This is a condition that Laban will not ask her to move or to do any searching, having her move. Rachel stole them. She's lied to him and got away with it. That's the bottom line. Except she didn't get away with it completely, did she? God knows. She couldn't hide it from God. Now Jacob goes from fear to anger. Now it's Jacob's turn. He's going to go from fear to anger with Laban. He's going to be mad at him. Beginning at verse 36. Let's read 36 through 42. As soon as I get there. Then Jacob became angry and contended with Laban. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Though you have felt through all my goods, you have not found all of your household goods. Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats you have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn of beast I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. You required of it of my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I have served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock. And you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been for me, surely you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, and so he rendered judgment last night. They're talking about when God talked to Laban. So Jacob, he goes from fear, now he's going to confrontation. He's going from that to anger, and he's going to have a few words to say to Laban. And you can imagine how Laban might feel, but you notice Laban isn't going to say much because he knows what God told him. And so Jacob doesn't have any idea that she stole those images, those idols. And so Jacob said what you and I would say, what's my transgressions? In verse 36, I haven't done anything. What is my sins? In other words, what's my sins that you wore out camels getting to me? What have I done to get here? You wore them out, verse 36. You've searched all my goods, verse 37. What you found is in front of everyone. There's nothing hidden. He reminds Laban now in verse 38 through 42, he's reminding Laban of something. He reminds him how long a service I gave to you, 20 years, verse 38. I've taken care of your sheep and your goats. No miscarriage, no eaten by the herds. And if there was any killed by wild animals, verse 39, or someone stealing the flocks, whatever it was, Jacob says, I took the loss of myself, not on you. So in verse 40, in other words, he's done everything that he should have done. He's honorable in this. So in verse 40, he says, I was there all the time with those flocks. I was working all the time. I was there in the heat of the day. I was there in the cold of the night. I didn't get any sleep. And the meaning he's telling Laban is you never lifted a finger to help me. You never, and they're your flock. You never did anything to help me. Any comments so far? Verse 41, if no. Verse 41. These 20 years I have been in your house. 20 years. I have served you 14 for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. You can see Jacob, he's laying it all out there for all to hear. He's not only wanting Laban to hear him, he's wanting Laban's people to hear that came with him. They all can hear. Everything's laid out. Before going, I forgot what I was going to say. I wanted to say something that I wanted you to look for that's amazing to me. But I just can't remember what it was, and so it'll come to me as we go. Verse 42. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been for me. See, he feared Isaac, didn't he? Yeah, he did. Isaac told him where to go. You're going to go to Laban's and live. Surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. You surely wouldn't have done that. God has seen my affliction and the toil on my hands, and so he rendered judgment last night. When God renders judgment, that's it, isn't it? That's it. He's coming back and he's going to render judgment. And there won't be no changing. Just like this. Jacob, in my mind, Jacob's releasing 20 years of frustration, all the things he wanted to tell him. I got something I'll share with you. And this doesn't mean anything, really. Beverly's dad had Alzheimer's, and it was terrible. It started out, we kind of had an idea, and it just got worse and worse. And when he was suffering pretty bad, and we all knew it, I did something for him at his house, and he never would have done this, and I knew this. But I felt like Laban. He came back on me with things I did when I was a little kid that I didn't even know I did. You know, but he wasn't right. He saw those things in his own mind, things that I didn't do, but he thought I did, and just raked me over the coals. And I loved him. And it was hard to just stand there and say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. I knew it wasn't right. I knew he wasn't right in his mind. He was a wonderful man. He was an elder of the church. He was a great man. And I think, in my mind, this is what Jacob is doing to Laban. 20 years of frustration. 20 years of frustration, all the things he wanted to tell him that he hadn't told him. And he also, remember, not only does Jacob have to deal with this and the fear of all this, also on his mind is something else. What else would be on his mind? That he'd want to take his family, all his kids and all the sheep and all the herds and the camels and go back. What is really on Jacob's mind that he's thinking about? Not just Laban and how much he suffered under Laban and what he's doing, and all his frustrations coming out, but what do you think is on his mind also? There's something really weighing on him. Do you know what that is on Jacob's mind? You want to guess? Going home, and who does he have to meet? Esau. He has deceived Esau with the encouragement of his mother, and Laban now has turned the tables on him, deceived him, and now Laban has been deceived. And we got a lot of deceiving going on, don't we? And all this time, in the back of Jacob's mind, it's been 20 years, and his mother told him, I will send for you in a few days. And she never does. And so he don't know what's happening back home. And he knows he's got to meet Esau because he stole the birthright, but it was God's will. And then he took the blessing, and it was God's will. But Esau don't see that. Esau's been mad for all these years. And in the back of Jacob's mind, he's thinking to himself, I've got to face him. I've got to face the reality of meeting him. And that's what we're going to be studying. It's just amazing to me. Laban wants to save face now. He's been told what he has done to Jacob, and now he wants to save face. He's going to make a covenant with Jacob, verse 43 and 44. Then Laban replied to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children. That's what he thinks anyway. And the flocks are my flocks. That's also what he thinks. And all that you see is mine. That's not quite true, but that's what he thinks. All that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters, or to their children who they have borne? I can't do anything to you, and I can't take all this stuff from you, because now I'm worried about my children. No, he's not. His daughters and his grandchildren whom they have borne. So come now, he says. So come now. Let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Laban, as you can see, Laban does not respond to Jacob's statement. Jacob has told him what all you've done to me for 20 years. And I have done nothing, and you didn't lift a finger to help me for 20 years. And so he doesn't respond to that, does he? Laban doesn't, because it's this absolute truth. That's why. 20 years of service, changing his wages on and on. He says everything that you have is mine. No, it's not. And then he said, but what can I do this day? What can I do this day? Let me make a covenant between us. Let's make a covenant. Let's make up. Let's work this out so you can come and see me with my children and my grandchildren. In verse 45 through 49. Then Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather up stones. So they took stones and he made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Now Laban called it, I am not going to make any attempt to pronounce that, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore, it was named Gilead. And we'll look at that in a minute, see what that means and what the other one means. And then the Mizpah, for he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. He's making a Mizpah is a watchtower. But I'm going to mark my Bible. Don't let me forget, that's one of my favorite sayings I haven't even yelled out, highlighted. May the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. Isn't that wonderful? I love those words, don't you? May the Lord watch between you and me, when we are absent from one another. Wow. Verse 50. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set between you and me. Let's go ahead and read. No, I'll stop. And so verse 45. Jacob took stones and set up a pillar. And then in verse 46, he told his kinsmen to gather stones, and so they made a heap of stones. And Laban called it, however you pronounce that, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by you laughing at me, by me making an attempt to do it. I even got it broke down by little asterisks, but that doesn't help me. In verse 47, what it means is a heap of witnesses, or a pile of testimony. That's what it meant in Laban's language. A heap of witnesses or a pile of testimony. And then verse 48, you see the Aramaic. Jacob called it Galeed in the Hebrew in verse 48. And then you have Mizpah, which is Hebrew, means watchtower. Verse 49, Laban said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we're absent from one another." In verses 50 to 53, in verse 50, he says, if you mistreat my daughters, verse 50, God is a witness between you and me. He's not going to mistreat them. But that's what a daddy would say about his daughters. You take care of my daughters. You take care of them. Verse 50, God is a witness between you and me. And so in verse 51, they built up this heap of stones as a pillar and confirmed the covenant between Jacob and Laban. Verse 52, a witness would be a pillar. The witness would be that pillar and Almighty God. And so in verse 53, Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Now, I'm going to finish this, so I want you to look at verse 54 through 55. Well, hello, princess. I tell you. Hey, I'm happy. So, in verse 54, Jacob offered a sacrifice to God on this mountain, and he called his brethren to come and eat the meal and stay the night on the mountain. Verse 55, early in the morning, Laban got up. Laban did what all father-in-laws should do, and fathers. He kissed his sons, he kissed his daughters, and blessed them, and Laban went back to his home. Jacob has one last obstacle now going home. He's preparing now to meet Esau, his brother, and he's not sure how it's going to come out. But he's trusting in God that God will be with him, and we're going to see that he wrestles with an angel next time we meet in chapter 32. Any final comments before I quit? Sit down. Just sit down, huh? Thank you.